Dr. Kyra Bobinet, has 5 words of advice on engaging people in health. It's a great tweet. Be caring, authentic, and useful. As a national speaker and the CEO and founder of Engaged In, which is a behavior design firm, Kyra devotes her life to cracking the code of why we engage in our health. She received her master's degree of public health right here at Harvard and her medical degree at UCSF. She has founded health startups. She's created blockbuster products, health apps, and evidence-based programs in mind, body, and metabolic medicine. She co-teaches patient engagement and health design at Stanford School of Medicine, and she studied in B.J. Fox Behavior Design Lab. We should tell B.J. that he's been referenced over the course of the day,
Awesome.
which is a great honor.
Very cool.
And when she's not geeking out on neuroscience, you can find her engaged in her kids, minimalist, eco-design, and surfing. She's also a horseback rider. I mean, I could go on. And what I will add, just having been a Kyra fan for so many years, is that she is very deeply authentic, I would say, and always informed and very passionate and very curious. And I think my favorite trait about Kyra is that she often says what most of us are thinking and just not brave enough to say. And I think that's a very important and very, very rare skill in the healthcare space. So please welcome Kyra.
Thank you.
I think you're good. You got it.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. So it's a real pleasure to be here and back in Boston. You know, about the Sunday before last, I was coming out of a 5-day-long health retreat. It was a meditation retreat for healthcare professionals in rural New York. And I had fasted, I had been silent for 5 days, and I had not been completely offline. So no phone, nothing. And I'm sure that some of you would have great withdrawals with that. And the first phone call that I got upon turning my phone back on was from my daughter, who is a freshman in college in San Diego. And it was 8:30 in the morning her time, West Coast, and I was 3,000 miles away. She was terribly ill. She couldn't swallow, and she had a full body rash, and she was crying. So of course, mommy doctor, felt completely helpless. How many of you have had or do have kids in college? So you know how helpless it might feel to be separated from them and to have something going wrong. So here I was, 3,000 miles away, 8:30 in the morning, and just coming off of this very intense retreat, and need my daughter to get care. Well, student health is closed, so now we had to go to urgent care. And I use my phone, and I'm frantically typing and figuring out where she can go for urgent care. I find a hospital, I text that to her. We're still on the phone. And she tells me, well, I can't find my insurance cards. So I take out my phone again, take pictures of the insurance card, both sides, and text that to her. Then she's like, I can't find a ride, because all my friends are asleep or hungover. And so then I take out my phone, open my Uber app, and send a car to go get my daughter. And if you guys have ever seen the Uber app, there's like a little game. It's like a car driving on the road. So I'm watching this tiny car go fetch my daughter and then pick her up, and then I'm still on the phone with her, and then it drives to the hospital with my daughter in tow. And I'm just praying that the background checks are legit. And then she gets there, gets care, gets diagnosed with some unknown strep thing, and then I get another Uber for her, and she goes home, safe and sound. Another girl in her same dorm also felt sick that day and did not go to the clinic or to the urgent care. She was admitted to the hospital on Tuesday in critical condition. She was pronounced dead, brain dead, on Thursday, Friday. And then they took her off machines on Saturday. I don't know what happened that caused the gap between Sunday and Tuesday. She had meningitis. But I do know that her life and her death has prompted the entire thousands of university students to both pay attention to themselves, their body, their symptoms, and get care when they need it. So my dream is that everyone would have the knowledge and the emotional support to take action and be engaged in their health. Because patient engagement has become this industry term, but really, I would invite us to think of it as the greatest opportunity we have to intercede with preventable death in the world. And it's so important because it is a matter of life and death so often. So we're going to start with, why is there a gap? So why won't we do what we should do? I was running a clinical trial on metabolic medicine, and we had about 200 patients, people who were doing different interventions for metabolic syndrome. And I did kind of a midterm qualitative interview with one of the patients. And she and I talked about it. I said, how's it going? She said, I love it. I'm learning so much about, what to eat and what to do and what not to do. And I said, oh, great. And she pauses, and she says, but I don't know why. I know what to do, but I don't know why I don't do it. And that, to me, was a huge light bulb. So basically, I think there's two things we should keep in mind. One is that people mean well. Everyone means to do things the right way. They mean to do well by their health. But on the other side, there is this irrational, illogical, behavioral evidence that shows that we don't often do what we say we want to do. So what's this all about? I really just have 3 points. One is that the fast brain is dominant. Number 2 is that self-image is the gateway of all engagement. And number 3 is that there's no new behaviors. So let's unpack this. Number 1, we are fast brain dominant. Historically, the health industry has targeted what I'll say metaphorically is the slow brain. This is the system 2 mind. We problem solve with it. We remember things on command. It's our conscious mind, so to speak. However, most of our behaviors, in fact, 95% of our behaviors are driven off of our unconscious mind or our fast brain. And this is because we have 11 million inputs coming to us every day, and we really need a way to filter for all of that and still sit here and listen to a talk and that kind of thing. I mean, all of us are distracted. Even as you sit here, I can see the level of distraction that we have, and my voice is kind of coming in and out, and you're thinking about other things and that kind of thing. Totally cool, totally all right, and normal. But that's how we survive every day. And so why don't we design healthcare in that way, or health engagement in that way? And because of our technologies, we are, in fact, more distracted than ever. That means that we have low attention. What attention we do have is fractured and unstable. So it's very fleeting, it's jumpy. This leads to something I like to call the dough moment, Homer Simpson. This means that you have the cookie in your mouth before you actually remember that you told yourself yesterday that you were not going to eat any more cookies. Or some of you may have this experience. You go on the internet to look for something up, look up something for work that's super important, and in fact end up looking at Kim Kardashian's latest story. And you're like, how did I get here? Well, it's because your fast brain is much faster and grabs you than your slow brain that's told you to go there for the work thing. Anybody have that experience? Their own version? Or like an email comes in, right? Everybody have that annoying thing where the email's like, a new email comes in every few seconds, and you're trying to get something done, and who turns it off so that you can even concentrate and create the presentation or whatever you have to do? So this means that we have to engage the fast brain. And one of the things that we do at Engaged In is we look at the heuristics of things. So for example, we blindfolded ourselves and took a pile of mail, and it was mixed mail. Some was important, some were bills, some were checks, some were junk mail, that kind of thing, because we had a project where somebody had hired us to look at their mailers that they were sending out and to figure out what needed to improve with them. And what we realized is that less than a second into it, you can feel with your fingers what's going in the recycler and what's going to be opened. And it has to do with the paper, the weight, the feel, all of those sort of sensory things. Because the fast brain is, the one thing it's doing is it's grouping and finding this most similar thing to what it's being exposed to. Another example would be, if you have a hot drink and you're talking to somebody, you're going to feel more warm towards them than if you have a cold drink in your hand. And these are sensory groupings, because any new stimulation that I get, any new stimuli that comes to me, my brain is automatically, without my knowing, is going to find the closest match and the analogy inside what I know and link it to that. And we call that mental models. So let's break it down. Basically, when you're designing for health engagement, you want to do two things. Make what's slow, like what needs to be slow, slow, and what needs to be fast, make it fast. For example, in the forebrain, which is sort of my metaphor for the system 2, the slow brain, you have plans, goals, strategies, willpower, coaching, groups, and contemplation. How many of you have tried these particular types of interventions, either as a participant or as a person who's creating something for somebody else to be engaged? Who set goals for yourselves? Okay. So that's the slow set. So in order for those to survive the quick set, the fast stuff, they have to be stabilized and given an advantage. Much like when I used to race my daughter and she was 2 or 3, I would let her win because I would slow myself down because I was naturally faster than her at my size. In the midbrain, you have things like emotions, gestalt, which is kind of like at a glance. Your first impression of me today, for example, or this presentation, or this conference, all that stuff kind of goes rapid fire right into your brain. Mental models, we talked about that. Shortcuts, so we're constantly shortcutting, like if this, then that. We've got a million of those in our heads kind of at the ready to condense and simplify our lives. Algorithms, same thing. And sensory groups, these kind of hot water, cold water stuff, and then habits. In the hindbrain, things that go there are defenses, predator-prey response. So for example, when you get an email that you did not sign up for, you have a predator-prey response to that marketer who sent you that email. We call it the author effect. We're constantly trying to figure out who is behind this thing, because we haven't had technology around long enough to make it its own thing. We turn it into a person. It's called anthropomorphization. So we always say, oh, this stupid thing, it's trying to get me to do this. Or we assign personality traits to technology as a way of shortcutting and understanding the predator-prey response of whether we're safe or not. Trust, stress, fight, flight, or freeze, all of this sort of fight or flight response stuff, and also impulses. The second point is self-image is the gateway of all engagement. So first thing you should know is we filter everything through our me center. And this is a center in our brain that makes me versus not me decisions. For example, everything everyone is wearing right now passed this test this morning. So you're all wearing me clothes as opposed to not me clothes. And you can see the cartoon here, what we say to dogs. Okay, Ginger, I've had it. Stay out of the garbage. Understand, Ginger, stay out of the garbage or else. What they hear is blah, blah, Ginger, blah, 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 Ginger, blah, blah, blah. So she's filtering for the me. So I want everybody to do one thing. Take your hands apart, open up your fingers, and then when I say go, I want you to slap them together and interlace them. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Hold it there. Notice which thumb is on top for you. And this is your me. Okay, pull them back apart. And when I say go, slap them together, but do the other thumb on top. Ready, go. Hold it. So you get it, right? It's not me. This is not me. And this is what we're asking people to do when we're asking them to change their behavior. It is not comfortable, and the mind wants to go back to the comfortable other thumb on top. And one really bad example of this is medicalization of people. So, I use the word patient engagement, but I really don't want to. I really want to say people engagement because it's really a medicalization term to call somebody a patient. Most of my time as a person is spent not being a patient. And even if I'm super duper sick or I have something chronic or genetic or those kinds of things, I still am loath to find people who would primarily put their identity as a patient. They're probably a person, a daughter, a mother, a father, those kinds of things before they're ever call themselves a patient. So, you want to be one of these people, or you want to be the person with the open gown in the back facing them as the patient? And just like this, which person do you want to be in this slide? Do you want to be the guy helping, or do you want to be the guy trying to do the push-up? Or Do you want to be more like this guy? So you can see that it's really the criteria of what we engage and what we don't gets first and foremost filtered by me versus not me. Another sort of sticky part of this is emotions. So Antonio Damasio, who is a neuroscience scientist at USC, had a patient that had an amygdala lesion. So that meant he didn't have emotions in the classic sense. And when asked to figure out where he was going to go for dinner, this patient spent an hour-long deliberation out loud, trying to use logic to figure out which restaurant was best and where he wanted to go. But because he didn't have emotion to kind of strike at it and land it, he sat there in the ether. And of course, some of you are married to people like this, and it's very frustrating. But you know, it's really, we have to have emotions as the substrate for connecting to what we want and making those decisions. And one question I always get when I speak from everyone, no matter what group it is, physicians, professionals, that kind of thing, is, well, Kyra, why can't we just use motivation? Or how do I motivate people to be more healthy? And I want you to propose a little quick way of understanding this. Unless the emotion is persistent and dominant in that person's life, then the motivation is going to be what we call unstable. Even if it's strong, like post-heart attack, you have a very strong peak of emotion, it's unstable because it doesn't go with the me, the self-image, and so it's going to fall apart under normal life and basically settle down into denial or those kinds of things. And we see that, you know, even adherence to medication doesn't really get through to people until they've had their second heart attack, unfortunately. So this idea, and I was a doctor trained to scare people into changing, and we know that doesn't work because fear is unstable. You know, we're going to figure out a way to feel better almost immediately. And this is really important because no matter how sick you are, you have to get up in the morning. And if you think things are hopeless or you think that you're ill or you're at risk, those kinds of things, how are you going to get out of bed, honestly? Third point is there's no new behaviors. I like this concept of water finds level because it's exactly what's going on in our brain. We want to feel grounded as opposed to groundless. We want to feel like we know as opposed to we don't know. Humans hate uncertainty. And so our brains are going to find, just like the other thumb on top, it's going to find a way back to the top thumb, right? This is why people who lose a ton of weight gain it back. This is why people relapse. It's because I get out there and I'm like, I don't really feel like myself anymore, and then I just have this kind of rubber band reaction going back. So this leads to something I like to call law of conservation of behavior, which is everything that was an old version becomes a new version of itself. Again, we are trying to consolidate and simplify and analogize to what we already know, and it's in your hands to control this or not. So some of the mental models of new medications, for example, when physicians are trying to enroll people in clinical trials or whatever, is guinea pig. Why don't we figure out a way to not have the brain go guinea pig on us? You know, why not give another mental model that is more beneficial and more accurate so that people feel more comfortable about their participation and their role in something? So it's your choice. You can either have it happen to you, or you can use this principle and create what you want people to link to in their minds around your product or your clinical offering. Another thing that we learned when I was in BJ Fogg's lab was this resolution of tension. So most actions that we do on our own are, first of all, self-triggered. This external triggering stuff really is not reliable. It's about an 80-20. So in order to get somebody to self-trigger, which is also another sort of proxy for intrinsic motivation, for some of you who like to speak that language, is that we have this tension that happens. And we did this with mobile apps where, you know, we noticed that people were opening apps primarily in order to relieve this tension. Like, what's going on? What's in the news? What's the weather like? You know, did I get any new emails? You know, like or I'm feeling a little bit bored, or I'm feeling a little bit stressed. And then the app relieved that, and it created this addiction. And I know you guys heard from Nir, who I'm buddies with over at Stanford, around just this sort of like, being able to feel that reward system of releasing that tension. And it's not much. It's just a little low-level anxiety, but all of us do it. All of us find a way to, I don't feel so good, and then they pull out our phones or whatever we do to relieve that. Another concept that we want to warn people away from is behavior fantasy, because if you have law of conservation of behavior, then on the other side, a lot of products fail because of behavior fantasy. And this is, building your product based on, what I like to say, and then a miracle happens, this is something, and then people will do this and this and this. And I used to get pitched a lot with people who are startups or products, and they would say, and then this person's going to do this, and this person's going to do that, and this whole daisy chain of behaviors is going to go off. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen, not at all. And especially in this case where you have something that is a headband, first of all, it's not something you wear to bed every night, so it's not like anything you normally would do. And then number two, it makes you look weird. So anytime that you pull somebody away from their baseline behaviors and their self-image, it's going to be a fail. Another form of this is you have logical, normal behaviors, but you're too greedy with it. You want them to do it too often or too much at once or those kinds of things. And that's, I think, a real possible risk with the wearables market right now, is that you've got like all these things strapped onto people, and at some point there's going to be a reject of how that is, and people ultimately are just going to pick one or two that sync together. And I know BJ is a big fan of small actions, baby steps, tiny habits, those kinds of things. The reason why that works is that you have this area in your brain called the habenula. And basically it's the kind of I told you so area of your brain. Whenever I try to lose weight and I fail, it goes 1 failure. Whenever I try again, 2 failures. And guess what? The more I try that and the more I fail and the more it's counted against me, the lower my ability to be motivated is. And so what we want to do is fly under that radar of counts within the habenula, and baby steps and small successes and small reward loops are one way to do that. Other people are really into quantum leaps, the sort of epiphany, significant emotional event kind of style. And I think that is actually legit. It actually does change behavior. However, you can't predict it. You can't really set up I haven't seen anybody who's reliably can set up the circumstances for it. Even Biggest Loser, which is, one could argue, is a very emotionally intensive experience. Again, strong but unstable, it settles back out to regaining the weight. So I wouldn't put a lot of stake in or trust in the quantum leap, but know that if you do have a emotion that's high and you can stabilize it and it doesn't get overwhelmed by denial or these kind of self-soothing behaviors, then you actually has a chance to change somebody's behavior. And my last point is we're all in this together, and it is up to all of us to achieve this dream of engaging ourselves and our loved ones and everybody else in health so that we can live really good lives. And this is the first person who ever engaged me in my health, Richard Simmons, when I was a young woman watching TV and he was doing little exercises on the TV. So may you be engaging. Thank you very much.